Phil, welcome to Early Days.
Carr, good to be here, brother. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on.
I spend my whole life chasing you. When will you come home to me?
Yeah,
Yes,
I
good to be
want
here.
I want to talk about this new thing that you're launching. It's first of its kind in the Bitcoin space, as far as I can tell. I don't know if there's anything else out there, but can you tell us a little about who you are and what you're building?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name's Phil. Haven't quite put my last name out there yet, but I think that's coming.
No pressure.
In the Bitcoin space, it's like I'm sort of like pseudo doxed at this point because on Twitter I post stuff, my face is out there, my face is here, but for whatever reason, I just really haven't wanted to get back around to the LinkedIn world of things, just because it's a corporate social media. If I can try and do it authentically, I'll do it that way, but only if I can do it that way. But anyway, yeah, my name's Phil. I am the founder and CEO of 21M Communications. And 21M Communications is a PR agency dedicated to getting Bitcoin companies the media attention that they deserve. Bitcoin startups, early stage, all the way up to, if you're well established and, done a Series A already, that type of stuff. And yeah, it's been a really exciting endeavor. We can get into more of the details behind that, but a little bit maybe more information about what led me to found 21M Comms was, I've spent my career in media, going back all the way to high school. I was doing TV and journalism stuff, did it throughout college, went to grad school to get my master's in communication, worked in various capacities across print media, magazine, digital media, broadcast TV. Spent time in the PR agency world. And while at my PR agency experience was happening, and I really wanted to do that to get involved at this point with the whole crypto industry. And it was Bitcoin, but it was all I'm not sure how family friendly the show is going to be, but all the ship coins, ship with a P. And I very quickly realized that I just wanted to be focused on Bitcoin only stuff. Became a Bitcoin only guy very short into that. And ever since that point, I had wanted to build something that was catered specifically for Bitcoiners by Bitcoiners, and that's 21M Communications.
It's a great name. I love that. I always love how the spin on Bitcoin company names and you kind of know if you know kind of thing. The 21M is very nice. I like that.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I was really inspired by 1031.
Right. Yeah. That's
I
another one
list,
too, where you wouldn't know unless you know.
yeah, exactly. So one of the formative podcasts I listened to was Marty on what Bitcoin did a couple years ago. It was 2023, and he was just I think it was Bitcoin as a cheat code or something like that, and it was very pivotal in actually getting me over the hump to go out and start 21M comms. But in the naming, I'm like, I don't want it to be like too close to that. But I love the whole subtle nod to Bitcoin without saying we're Bitcoin communications or whatever. And so I did a poll. I went on X and I was like, here are some options. What do you think? And then I put out a bounty for anyone that could come up with something that was different than those options. If I liked it, then I'd give them some sats, 10K sats or something like that. And it wasn't one of my initial options. So it was crowdsourced and I gave some sats to another Bitcoiner in Africa for it.
Nice. That's great. What was the besides that podcast? Was there anything else that made you make the jump, or that led to you making the jump?
Yeah, my own personal experience, or I guess professional experience at this point. So when I was working in the agency, I won't name the agency, but I did have, I mean, a tech agency, crypto, Bitcoin, so a little bit of everything. 90% non-Bitcoin stuff, but I had the opportunity to work with a Bitcoin company here and there, and what a difference, right? So just the on a wavelength level, working with Bitcoiners is much different than the folks that are building in the quote unquote crypto space. A little bit different if if you're doing infrastructure stuff in the crypto space, but if there's tokens involved, it's entirely different. And the time preference, right? Just the fact that the Bitcoin companies always stayed around longer. They were very not one dimensional, but they were hyper focused on a concrete goal that was longer term, right? There was a vision there, and you could tell a purpose when you're speaking to somebody, someone that actually is passionate and cares about the thing, and that's invaluable experience. Like being able to dabble in the crypto industry as a whole, and then fine tune my own belief structure personally and professionally by working with these companies. And the one I think piece of one thing I realized about like the agency world per se was that well, common business sense tells you if you're going to offer service, offer that service to the largest possible market that you can go after, which is fine. And in this case, that means you're going to do PR, do it for all of crypto. Crypto has all the funding, maybe have some Bitcoin, but whatever, get the money and then figure it out later. I had a really hard time with that approach. I wanted to do something that was aligned with my belief systems. It's an ethical decision because doing it from a business perspective, really the advantage there is being the first mover. And you have first mover advantages, you have first mover disadvantages. Like, are we too early, right? Because the state of Bitcoin funding's not really there. So I recognized that. Well, there was an opportunity there because no one was doing it. But at the same time, I really didn't feel like I had an option. I had that angst inside of me that I just can't keep doing it with the crypto companies. Like, I know I can be successful. I know it's going to be challenging, but over a long enough time frame, I think everyone that is building in Bitcoin will be rewarded. It might not be instant or near term, but years from now, when I look back on it, and I'll look back on those struggles and be happy that I took that leap, and knowing that I had to do something that was really tight knit, right? One man band style, working, helping Bitcoin companies that don't have the budget, that haven't even raised a seed round, or let alone a Series A. So being flexible in the way for these Bitcoin companies, given the state of funding, while wanting to provide a level of service that was foundationally sound in terms of the understanding and passion behind Bitcoin. Because with the agency world, a lot of those folks, they're good at PR. They're good people, but they're managing a ton of accounts, shitcoin companies, maybe a Bitcoin company here and there, but they're monitoring the time that they spend in each of those companies. And they're saying, I got to move on to this thing now. The level of understanding or desire to understand what the Bitcoin companies are doing is really not feasible for those larger agencies or even like mid-sized, smaller agencies. So, yeah, I wanted to do something that someone that understands Bitcoin can convey the messaging in a way that's going to resonate with the media. You don't need to spend a lot of time trying to explain why Bitcoin is viable to begin with. Like, we've all orange pilled people, and we know how long that can take. It's the same type of thing, but if you could just work with somebody that understands it from the get go, then it'd be a much more frictionless process with a higher rate of success in terms of getting media attention at a more feasible investment level, given the state of Bitcoin funding right now. And that's a lot of words. So
No,
I'll show.
that's great. This is exactly what I was looking for, just to get a complete understanding of why you built 21M, and then more or less like where did you see the advantages and disadvantages in the marketplace to achieve those. And it sounds like from what you're describing that the maybe the crypto space slash like a normie space was just a little too high time preference. Can you talk about that high time preference in PR and marketing and but be able to balance it in a Bitcoin way that's not crypto, right?
Yes, yes. Well, I like to say I do high time preference results for low time preference Bitcoin companies. So, I don't want to say, oh, just because Bitcoin companies are, low time preference that they don't want results immediately. That's not to say that. So yeah, the difference there is in terms of what how we're defining success. And the beautiful thing about Bitcoin is that it's just Bitcoin. There's no other token, right? The VCs that are involved with those companies aren't, they want to get a return, but they don't want to. They're ethically aligned in terms of not in agreeing that pump and dump schemes, the pump and dump, the whole vaporware Ponzi scheme of crypto and that whole side of things is just it's an ugly thing. And so when you strip that away and you're not just worried on how the token launch is going to perform or how the token's going to look, 2 months from now, then that opens up, a lot of, I think a lot more freedom to do creative storytelling, still accomplish the goals in terms of whatever metrics that Bitcoin companies are looking for in an authentic way, one that's going to have staying power, right? And ultimately, those relationships lead to longer term relationships. Whereas the stuff in crypto, they're like sprints. Hey, we want to do something for you know this month, and then that's it, right? Because they're just focused on the token. Whereas Bitcoin, it's you know you have a they're going to be around for a lot longer. So that's what I would say. I think I probably have more to say, but I don't want to I don't want to get too negative with it. So I'll stop.
No, no, you're fine. I think that was great. I think the other thing I would love to hear your thoughts on is the just the marketing side on the Bitcoin ecosystem and kind of just your thoughts, from afar and like how you look at it from your standpoint and some of the ways that you think work and some of the ways that you've seen might not work for other things that you've seen out there.
Yeah, there's a quote by Seth Godin or Seth Godin, depending on how you say his name, where he says marketing is no longer about the stuff you make, it's about the stories you tell. So I always try to keep that top of mind because we're still so early, right? We're so early, and it's true. We say it a lot, but we're still at this early adopter phase of things where a lot of the products and services they've got very cool game changing tech that are enabling whatever they're doing. And the founders are oftentimes some of the smartest people that I've worked with or come across and very technically minded as well. And I think that there is a inclination to want to focus on technically why your product or service is different than the other or why it's novel and new. Some of that, I mean, that's all very important stuff, but the main thing is when we're conveying the benefits to the media, right? Because you got to understand the end consumer here is not at the stage as a Bitcoin founder, especially if they're very technical. So how do we take what you're doing from a technical standpoint and explain it in a way that mostly anybody can understand, using analogies, using examples, spending time on calls with reporters or podcasts that lend nicely to more nuance and context so that you can explain a more intricate idea, versus just something quick hitting. And that's the main thing. It's a bit different for every client, and it takes some pressure testing along the way to say, okay, we tried this messaging, this one liner, this hook to, gain attention from the media. It worked, but how can we evolve this a little bit? And that's a helpful process that I've found.
No, that makes sense. I think one of the ways I keep seeing in this space that a lot of people tend to go after is this kind of like putting themselves as an influencer, for lack of a better word, and
Right.
then leveraging that influencership of a sort instead of just focusing on the company as a brand. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I don't is that necessarily like I don't know if that's a bad thing or that's a good thing or that's just one way I think Bitcoiners look at how to market themselves and what they're doing.
Yeah, bad thing, good thing. Uh, for whatever it is, whether it's a bad or good thing, it is the way that it is now. I mean, I really think that companies like or the relationship with consumers or businesses to companies has changed. It feels like there's been a paradigm shift where now we care more about the people that we're doing business with, the figureheads of the company. Do we align with that person philosophically? I don't think that that's necessarily going to change. I think it's a good thing. If I had to choose, because people are more diligent consumers than they've ever been before, especially Bitcoiners. Um, so you compare, uh, um, let's say like NVK, right, at CoinKite and being extension of their products versus Ledger and the CEO and founder of Ledger, and how people typically make a decision on what product they're going to go with, maybe if they're earlier on in their journey. Most people, I believe, are going to not just do the due diligence on the company, which is very important, right? But they're going to try and dig up podcasts or articles written or any type of media opportunities that they can hear the founder talk about their company. And do I trust this person? Right? Is this person speaking my same language? And so I think it's a good thing, because if you can if I mean if you're an authentic person and you truly believe what you're building, uh, then putting that spokesperson or thought leader of that company in front of the media and in front of consumers or other businesses is only going to yield good results ultimately for that individual and that brand. Maybe we could thank Sailor. I don't want to thank Sailor a lot for that stuff, because obviously that there's there was a trend before Sailor, but Sailor's an interesting example, because I mean, what the guys, it's micro strategy. Like, if there's any traditional finance mainstream person that's been out there that's adopted Bitcoin, it's Sailor. But at the same time, at least in the early days, pun intended for the podcast, he was speaking more to the plebs. But you sort of saw how that changed a little bit, and it's funny how you can have a leg in fiat world and another leg in the Bitcoin world and do that successfully. So he's in a way only like a once in a, not even a once in a cycle, like a once in a generation maybe kind of spokesperson, that can do those types of things. But if you're not comfortable in front of the media and you don't want to be that public facing figurehead for your company to the point that you're doing broadcast TV interviews and talking about the price of Bitcoin on those interviews, or whatever it is, then there's still a way to be impactful with positioning that spokesperson and the brand in the media in terms of getting quote placements, doing content, opinion editorial type of stuff that's opinion driven, right? Non hype, non marketing the company type of stuff, but is adjacent to the value proposition of the company. Um, so yeah, that's how I feel about that. I could, yeah, really, it depends on who the founder is of the company, I would say.
Now that's great. That's great. Just like framing for how to look at that, because I definitely looked at it completely differently until you just gave me that answer. Now it's something I have to go back and think about and be like, yeah, I guess that is the right way to frame it.
Yeah, I'd love to
And
hear your
I love the
thoughts.
examples that you gave. Like the examples that you gave also are great examples of, two founders that I really respect. It's like,
Yeah,
I mean, you couldn't learn from two better than the ones that you named.
yeah,
Um, cool. So let's go into something else, because I think most people that are probably listening to this are, doing their company, or, in the early days of their startup, um, or their project. What for the people that are listening to this, can you tell them the difference? Because I don't think most people understand the differences between PR and marketing, and what those entail, and how those are different. Um, I wouldn't even call them tools. I would call them hammers. and and whether you want to use which one at what time. For the people at home, can you explain the two?
yes. I think they go hand in hand. They're an ideal one-two punch. Typically, when I work with, well, not typically, but it depends. Some companies are at different stages, but oftentimes I work with the marketing directors of the Bitcoin companies, to complement what they're doing from, on a PR standpoint. And I would just say that oftentimes their marketing is really focused on driving leads, right? Driving revenue to the company, and hyper focused on what that funnel looks like. And so that a lot of times can be like paid advertising, social media marketing in terms of, okay, here's what we're posting at this date. Here's our call to action, to drive people. What I'm doing is working alongside the marketing department to help drive earned media coverage. So the types of things that they're brainstorming in terms of their product and the market viability and all that type of stuff they're doing in-house. Marketing folks are involved there, but I'm talking to them to say, okay, what here is newsworthy? What kind of threads can we pull from things that you have coming down the roadmap? And let's think about how we can utilize that for landing earned media coverage in terms of podcasts, in terms of getting coverage in the crypto press, the Bitcoin press, broadcast media, to get more mileage out of the marketing that you're doing, and supporting in a lot of the content stuff as well, but more of the longer form aspect of that.
Can you give me an example? And it doesn't have to be one that you're working with, but that one that you see out there consistently doing what you're describing, in the Bitcoin ecosystem, or not. Maybe there isn't one. And yeah, take your time to answer that. But yeah, when I think about this stuff, I always love the way some of these companies do that one-two punch that you're talking about, where you will see them on a podcast, on a PR release with the big publication. Then you see maybe an opinion note from the founder, the previous week before, explaining why this trajectory, or this path is the right path, and trying to get the ecosystem involved, and then going down to the clubs and talking to them on Stacker News, or wherever. Um, can you think of a company that you see that does that really well?
AMBOSS one is one that comes to mind. I like to use AMBOSS. I'm not sure if you know. Do you know Jesse by
Yeah,
chance?
yeah, no,
Yeah,
just
Jesse's
yeah,
awesome. I've got a great relationship with Jesse. I like to. AMBOSS is interesting because it's very technical, right?
right.
Um, and so it's their Lightning Network liquidity providers. They've got different types of services, different, the in terms of the marketing they do in house, in terms of how they segment those services. It's very technical stuff. So, um, man, recently, what's the piece of news that I'm blanking on the actual product. Oh, Jesse's gonna kill me. Don't watch this, Jesse. I'll find it. I'll find it later.
Are you talking about their? You're talking about the wallet stuff that they're doing.
Let me go to the website and see if I can just
You're
if
not
I
talking
can
about
pull.
Magma, right?
Well, Magma was they also did an AI thing. They did Magma AI. So they've done Magma
Okay.
before, but then they released an AI agent that can automatically um, adjust balances and everything. You can do like bulk orders for new Lightning channels. There was a lot of cool stuff, very technical stuff at the same time. So Jesse and I've got a relationship that goes back, and he's like, "Well, is this first off?" Here's what we have. Is this going to be newsworthy at all? Like is there any component? So I would work with Jesse to kind of look what they have, ask questions. Oh, there's an AI component. Like, tell me a little bit more about how AI is integrated with this. Is it accurate to say that we can position something like a headline of, Lightning Network taps AI, right? Or whatever it is that's going to capture the attention of someone or some people in the media that's not leading with the name of the product and the super technical things to begin with. So what I did with Jesse is I worked with him on editing the announcement to just kind of move some things around and really let the inverted pyramid style stuff, right, like Hemingway would talk about. At the top of that pyramid is the most salient information first, and then you build on the details the farther you go down. That would be the technical stuff, but you talk about the benefits first. And coming up with, I love the practice of not just sitting there and like laboring over one type of headline. Or what I would say, actually, what I'm speaking about is a pitch. So when I'm pitching the media, I'm thinking about the most valuable part of that email is going to be the subject, right? That's the headline. That's the thing that's going to capture the information or the attention of that reporter. These reporters are getting 30 emails a day. They can't get to every single thing. So instead of laboring over trying to make one perfect subject, or I would say, because you want to have a subject sort of be like a headline, in a way you want to write that story for them. I'll write like 10 or as many as I can think of, and then stress test from there. Work with the founder. Hey, how do you think about this? What do you think about positioning it this way? Is that even accurate to say? And then from there, you build a list of reporters that news would actually resonate with and make sense to. Right. So you wouldn't want to pitch. You're not going to be successful if you pitch, a reporter at a crypto publication that covers meme coins for a Lightning Network AI integration. Or you're not going to be successful pitching a certain editor at CoinDesk. Actually could hurt. If you haven't looked into what that reporter's covering, that's going to hurt your chances, it's going to hurt the brand. So you've got to be really careful about that. But anyway, so we were successful in getting coverage in Bitcoin News and I believe Bitcoin Magazine as well. But we got a really good feature in Bitcoin News that we worked with a guy over there, Connor, who's just a very sharp reporter and was able to draft a very long, in-depth feature explaining the entire value proposition of AMBOSS, and why this new product was a game changer for the market. At the same time that news went live, we had some podcasts lined up where Jesse could then speak more in depth, right? Outside of just this, static feature, which is great, which is almost like a flag in the ground of like, hey, we accomplished this. Anytime someone searches for AMBOSS, they're always going to see this article. But oftentimes it requires another 30 minutes, another hour to explain the intricacies of why it's important for the larger ecosystem of Bitcoin or anyone that's looking to adopt Lightning, and then getting that picked up in Bitcoin Breakdown newsletter, which is a great one, and No BS Bitcoin, and I think it might have made it to Stacker News as well. And ultimately, when you look back on a successful campaign, you want to feel some sense of validation, I would say, right? You want to say, okay, we knew that this was interesting. We knew that this was very really valuable. Um, did we market this in the right way? Did we explain it in the right way that other outlets that we reached out to and shared the information with also felt that it was valuable for people to know? And at the end of those announcement campaigns, when you have something specific like that to pitch, you want to look and you want to say, hey, we actually, owned a part of that week. We're a part of that news cycle for that week, and it validated our brand and elevated it, hopefully.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, that's a perfect example of just kind of walking us through what that looks like. The other thing that you mentioned too is the virality of it all, right? Like it finally made its way to Snacker News, so like there was some pleb out there that saw it and was like, "Hey, this is worth sharing," and then you kind of get those impressions on all these other different platforms and Noster and Twitter and all that stuff. So yeah,
That's yeah.
yeah. Go ahead.
No, that's exactly right. I'd say even outside of just the what I always say is there's so much juice to squeeze out of that orange. So the value is not just in the feature, the value is not just in the podcast. The value is posting that feature on your socials, taking a portion of that feature and quoting, something that the reporter wrote about. You can and podcast clip. Oftentimes the onus is on the company, not the podcaster, to do the clips and share the clips out. But if you've got an hour of content, right, that you just you dedicated time to prepping for that interview, you had some good moments, maybe not some great moments. I think we've all done interviews where like, I missed that or I didn't explain that the right way. But finding 30 seconds to a minute or a few minutes of you explaining something about that product or service that you can share across socials, and clipping maybe 4 different clips from that podcast, like there's a lot of mileage that you can get out of that. And so whatever the opportunity is, I think every founder should be and marketing person should be thinking about, how can we stretch this further from all the work that we've already put into this?
Yeah, I mean that's really what it comes down to when you're building in the early days. Like, talk about if you can just talk about what are some of the things that first time founders should be doing from the onset when it comes to the PR and marketing stuff. I mean, maybe they can't afford a 21M, but maybe they're thinking like, okay, well, I'm going to get there at some point. Like I'm going to reach out to Phil at some point, but for right now, I can start these things to make maybe that a little easier in the long run. Is there like 3 things? Do you have like a template for stuff that they should be doing right from the onset?
I'd break it down into 3 buckets for people. Uh, Bucket one, announcements and community updates. Spend time, put a doc together where it says announcements and everything that you have that's coming down the pike, regardless of how firm it is. Bullet point it out. Just put it down there. Any products, updates, partnerships, aspirational partnerships, conversations that you're having, anything at all that would be of any value to either your community or to the media. Put it on there and revisit that on a weekly basis. Make updates. Hey, what progress have we made toward any of these initiatives? You could break it down by quarter, or if you don't have anything really or firm coming down the pike just yet, but always like, set aside time to revisit that and think about maybe this thing is valuable to the media. Like, is there anybody? Let's just start like in the Bitcoin world. If you're a Bitcoin founder, like there's Bitcoin publications. So it's like, has anyone at Bitcoin Magazine ever wrote about this before? Can I find someone that's reported or that's contributing that has maybe covered something similar? And I'm gonna take that person's name and I'm gonna put it on the Google Doc as well. And I want to build a relationship with that person, reach out, introduce myself, and let them know who I am, what I'm building, or what I've built, and so that I can have an open line with that person, so that when I do have something to announce, I've got an open line. and I can go and I can say, hey, we've got this exciting news that's coming up 2 weeks from now on this date and this time. Would you be interested in covering it? Here's more information about it. Um, so you could take that same formula and go to any crypto publication and build reporter lists that are valid to the things that are that you're doing at your company. So some of the things you're going to come across, maybe it's actually not newsworthy. It wouldn't be beneficial to actually create a formal announcement and pitch to the media, or even put something on PR Wire and PR Web. That's another thing I should mention too. So there are services out there like syndication services that you can use, like Chainwire, PR Web, Business Wire. And anytime you have an announcement, you can put that on the wire and you can get syndications in, like the Benzingas of the world, the Yahoo Finances of the world, so on and so forth, that would take the announcement verbatim and syndicate it, which is going to help with your SEO and everything. It's not going to be feature coverage, it's just syndicated and it comes at a price. You're going to be looking, I believe Chainwire is up around 5,000 per announcement, actually. Which is, I could give you an exact quote if I pull my document up that I have, which maps it all out. Some
Do,
services are going to be like 500. You'll
do
get
those work,
syndicated.
Phil? Do those work? I've always wondered if those types of
If you're big enough and you care, and if you have enough initiatives going toward like SEO and backlinking, right? If that's a big enough initiative for you, then they can be effective. But
but why
I
would
think,
why would a publication choose to pull from that? I guess like from their side. Can you explain why on the media side or the media publication side they would pull from that wire? Um,
because it's backlinks for those outlets too, and they've got relationships with the syndicators of the world, right? So that
okay,
there's value sharing.
okay.
Yeah.
Do
So
you find so that was always a thing that I always wondered. Do you find there's a lot of publications that do that kind of like tit for tat or pay to play type of thing?
on the
Like
crypto outlets
how
too.
does that work more or less? Is it like I mean, as a first time founder, how does that work? Do they expect you to know that going in, or is it something that you just kind of grow accustomed to over time?
Yeah, you just get sort of go accustomed to that. I mean, essentially, you can think of that as sponsored content, right? So that whatever crypto outlet it is, they want to, they're trying to get revenue not just from their viewership, right? They're trying to get advertising revenue from anyone out there that's, working in the space. So you oftentimes, there, if, any of these outlets, which is completely separate from editorial, right? You know, but editorial, the sponsored, sales team might be reaching out to you, but that's completely different from the editorial, the earned media side of things. Their initiative is to just get revenue for that outlet. And you could expect, if you're a founder, to be pitched certain paid opportunities on a very regular basis, whether that's podcasts that are reaching out, or even crypto publications. I don't know that they do a great job of disclosing that up front, or maybe they don't even take the time to explain that what they're doing is a different department than the editorial team.
Yeah, totally. I think the way you explained that makes a lot more sense. And I think if
Yes.
more and more publications were more upfront about that, about the sponsorship opportunity side, and then the editorial, hey, we're in this for the writings, I guess.
Yeah, and even sometimes when, so maybe you've gotten some earned media coverage, you got something organic, and then at that point maybe you pop up on the sales team, or maybe the sales team finds you, and then maybe they try and talk to someone in editorial because you've got an announcement coming up and they want to close business, so they're going to maybe talk to somebody at editorial, say, hey, can we push this announcement through because we're trying to close them. So it can get a bit convoluted. Anyone that's ever been in sales on the sales and marketing side versus the creative side. Like, that tension that
Yeah,
can
totally.
sometimes happen. It's pretty infamous.
Just like
So
two different mindsets, like going head to head.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's no different than in our industry.
Okay. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Fascinating. I always love that, learning both sides and talking to other people about it. I just think it's so fascinating.
Yeah, it is. It's a very interesting dynamic. But so anyway, so the announcements there, those are one thing to keep an eye on, the community updates. The other, that's one bucket. The other bucket is media activity. Media activity to say, um, start doing a good job of social listening. I think can be a pretty easy thing to do
Can you
as a
describe that, Phil? What do you mean by social listening? What do you mean?
social listening. So identifying the vertical. So anything that your company should be a part of the conversation. Let's just use in mainstream. I know we're not trying to talk about anything in the news cycle, but say your company, maybe you're doing wealth management, or maybe you're doing custody or something like that, and you want to be talking about the strategic Bitcoin reserve. You want to be talking about Bitcoin treasury stuff, right? And you're like, well, how do we get a part of these conversations? Well, you should probably start setting alerts for anyone that is in the media that's talking about strategic Bitcoin reserve. Google alerts, right? Very helpful. Going on X and doing keyword searches for strategic Bitcoin reserve. Being a part of the bigger conversations. You don't need to grovel, right? And the ones that don't have a lot of followers, but oftentimes, like even if there's Twitter Spaces and people want to talk about that type of thing and you want to be a part of that conversation, you're only really going to be able to get yourself in that position to talk about it if you're doing a good job of listening, and you can be quick to provide commentary for reporters that maybe have just covered it, and you reach out and you say, I'm a resource for you if you're going to be covering this in the future. Or if it's on X and you're like, hey, let's create a Twitter Spaces, or if you're going to do something, I'm happy to lend some of my wisdom on stage, or whatever it is. So I like to say that in terms of media activity, there's two different ways you can go about that. One is trend jacking. It's like riding a wave, right? There's already people talking about this thing. So how do we catch the momentum of what's being talked in the media right now? How do we insert ourselves into the SBR conversation? The other one is more proactive. So what is unique to our value proposition? What kind of trends can we potentially start? Right? What's something that people aren't talking about right now, but actually they should be, because it's kind of a big deal. This is important. And so developing, proactive ways to reach out to the media and try and be a trendsetter, right? So two different paths to growing brand recognition, or, thought leadership recognition as well.
That's so great. I just actually just saw somebody who, this obviously coming from young people that are on TikTok and stuff, and this one kid like made like hundreds of thousands of dollars with his like AI app, and he went through TikTok, kind of did exactly what you said, made an Excel spreadsheet, and then started making videos around that, inserting his app in that process, and he was able to just make some reoccurring revenue just like that. And it's basically
And
what you're
TikTokers, I
talking
tell
about.
you. Sorry, what was that, car?
No, I was gonna say it's basically what you're talking about. It's doing the homework and actually going out there and looking for that social signal, and then being proactive about it, right? Like that's such great sage advice. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, appreciate that. Yeah. Yeah, get out. I
What's
mean, you
the
start building those lists, right? Like
what's
look at
the what's
every
the last bucket that you said, so that you said
third
those
bucket.
two buckets. What's the
Yeah.
third bucket?
I would also add podcasts to the second bucket of media activity, by the way. All right. So you can reach out to podcasts. Right? You want to. I mean, these are like-minded people. They care about Bitcoin. They're talking about Bitcoin all the time. Like they probably would love to talk to you if you're a founder in the space. So you can be very proactive in getting on podcasts, and again, clipping some of the things that you're saying in that podcast and using it for your socials and sharing it, in a newsletter that maybe you're putting out there. So that's in the second bucket. The last bucket is content. So opinion editorial content is a great way to gain recognition in the media. You don't need to over. I mean, you can get opinion editorials placed in CoinDesk, Bitcoin Magazine, Bitcoin News. You don't need to overcomplicate it. I'd say if you've got a Bitcoin company, you should focus on trying to get that op-ed published in either Bitcoin Magazine or Bitcoin News, and it's a great way to, alongside the building that you're doing. What I find the conversations I have is that there are so many different threads to pull while you're building something. And a lot of those threads to pull come from more of the black pill, right? Because you're offering a solution to a problem. But in order to sell that solution, you've really got to like put your finger on the problem, on that pain point, and be able to articulate that in a way that makes the solution obvious, right? You only want the solution to be like, oh, of course, like that's the thing. So as we're going through that problem finding phase, identifying what those problems look like, building a list of those problems, and I guarantee you, each of those problems, each of those topics have the ability to be turned into engaging content. 800 to 1,000 word piece of content that's not promotional, that is taking a stance and is an opinion of the founder that here's what's broken in Bitcoin, right? And here's how we fix it. And you spend that time in that opinion editorial piece, essentially educating and arguing for why this particular thing is broken, and at the end of that, the solution is a value proposition that's adjacent to your whatever it is that you're offering, without actually saying, here's what our product's called, here's our company name, that type of thing, right? Because it can't be promotional. So you can turn out content. You can work with the editorial team at pretty much any outlet and pitch that idea, and hopefully get that published in that outlet. And that's a stamp of validation. You can't say that something's going to go viral or not, but if you share it, if it's shared by Bitcoin Magazine, it's on the website, maybe it strikes a nerve because it's timely. And that's also a good formula for any type of op-ed that you're writing. Like, is this timely right now, right? Are people talking about this right now? Can I strike a nerve and get enough people to also engage in this conversation around this piece of content, and get people arguing with each other, essentially. And it's a great way to build thought leadership for any spokesperson at a company.
No, this is great. This is great stuff. I mean, you're sharing it all. I love it. We're coming up to the top of the hour for our time, but I want to ask you one more thing. I've been in this whole like newsletter kick lately, and been focused on that. And I've also started looking at like even kind of what you're saying in that third bucket, and then seeing if you can get those into other people's newsletters. Like I have
Yes.
noticed that I find myself more attracted to newsletters because it's curated, and there's some thought leadership that you're describing. And then if it's somebody from I respect, I'll read through what they're also sharing. Can you talk about the importance of, or maybe not the importance of email subscribers and newsletter and stuff like that?
I love it. Yeah, I mean, absolutely love it. Like you said, it can be very noisy out there. And if you I think any Bitcoiner arrives at this place where they have their favorites. Like I love the TFTC newsletter. I love the Bitcoin Breakdown newsletter. I love like No BS Bitcoin. There are a lot of other great ones out there, but for whatever reason, I make it a point to see what they're telling me when it comes across. So yeah, I would create a list of newsletters in the industry that you can subscribe to. Just be a fan of them, right? And then you get an idea of the types of content that they like to cover. and then it becomes very organic. And you're like, oh, like I love this newsletter. Uh, the things that they write about are the things that I build. My opinion would fit nicely into what they've got. I'll reach out, and you don't need to do it day one. It doesn't need to be some contrived, forced thing of like I'm gonna go pitch this newsletter right now. But yeah, start building that list and just start consuming that content, and then eventually you just kind of become second nature.
Yeah, great stuff.
Do you have
Is
any other
there
newsletters that you like that you'd add to
so
that?
so I'm actually really into, obviously, all the ones that you've said I'm subscribed, but the ones that really fascinate me the most are like some of the younger generation newsletters, and seeing how they interpret
Hmm.
newsletter creation. I was talking to somebody late last year, and she was from New York, and she was doing this whole like newsletter thing, but it was totally unorthodox of what me or you would expect from a regular newsletter. But I found it to be really captivating, and she had a big subscriber list and talked about the subscriber list. But the way she went about it was so unique, and I was like, wow, there's some good stuff in here that I definitely have taken. But so those are the ones I kind of follow just to get some new, fresh ideas, and then outside of the ecosystem, just like regular tech stuff or startup stuff, or even like faith-based stuff and all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah, I love that. I'll say that that's just to go back on producing, right? There's a lot of consuming, and there's an endless appetite for consumption in media. But even in my personal journey, so 21M Communications, we use Zapright, okay, and I knew of Zapright because I knew of Parker Lewis, and I've always been a fan of all the content that Parker has put out and his presentations, and I really valued his point of view with things. And so that's I wanted to work with Zapright from the get go, right? Because of Parker Lewis. And funny enough, when I had reached out to Zapright to do a demo, I heard back from Parker, and I was starstruck. I'm like, I've read I've read all his articles, I've listened to his presentations at events, and he's informed so much of the way that I see things. And there are a lot of other folks out there that I feel the same way as I do toward Parker. And I think it just goes to show you that if you're passionate about something and you write about it and you produce, then eventually you don't actually know who's going to come across that, who's going to start a business and need your service. And it's really incredible how just consistency toward that effort will pay off in the future. You just don't know what it's going to look like.
it's funny you bring that up, because I actually did bring you up to him when he was asking about the
Really?
top builder workshops, and he remembered you. Like he
No
did. He
way.
said, "Yeah, promise, yeah." So it was kind of funny that you bring that up right now, because he really did. He was like, "Oh, Phil, no," he goes, "Yeah, I did talk with him," and so
That's awesome.
yeah,
That's
small
awesome.
small world.
I want to work
Um,
with them. I want to work with those guys. So yeah.
and I'm learning from them every day. I mean, it's yeah. I mean, just being in Austin and then seeing how they really do set the tone for a lot of what we do here in the city. And there's some people that go with it, and there's some people that go against it. And
Mhm.
I've always been a big fan of going with it, because it's like what you said. It's like you just see the proof of work, and you see the skill set, and then you also see the way the man carries himself and how they go about things. No one's perfect. I'm not saying
Of
that. I'm
course.
just saying that there's certain leadership qualities that I definitely look to and definitely respect. And so like that's where, like, for us being, I think if you're building your early stage startup in Austin, why would you go anywhere else when you can be around these other great people to learn from? And then
Amen,
you're inside
brother.
of Plub Lab, so you're learning from some of the smartest people in the world. So
I'm not
yeah,
in Austin, but I'm all the way in Hawaii on this little rock in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. But I'll say, I wish I no, can't complain about being in Hawaii, of course, but just that I think if you're a new founder, the having a network of folks that are like-minded, that are also on the same path as you, and especially to be in person too, right? To have somewhere physical, right? Your third place or second place, whatever it is completely invaluable. just to be in that aura. And
Yeah,
to see the
totally.
guys that came before too and actually did it, and to have that type of mentorship, with they've all been through Pleb Lab, right? Like Zap Right, the Voltages of the world, the Opakis, the whatever it is. I mean, what you guys, what you've created there is, I mean, truly incredible. So, I've got major FOMO being here, but I'm at least happy enough to have the virtual relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I want to get out to Hawaii at some point.
Dude,
The Bitcoin scene's
Bitcoin,
brewing there, right? Like it's
yeah.
taking off.
I was gonna say we got to do some type of Hawaii Bitcoin festival.
Dude, bring Startup Day to Hawaii. Make
Yeah, for
that
sure, man.
happen. That would be cool.
I've always thought of Hawaii as just, or even I'm a surfer, the way I think about Hawaii is, adjacent to surfing, and I've always felt, surfing is counterculture lifestyle, is counterculture sport, and Bitcoin is counterculture money. The way I like to think about that, and it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And so if we can drive more attention to Bitcoin in Hawaii, and events are a way to do that as well, I think that would be a great thing to do.
Awesome. Phil, thank you for coming on the show. Is there any places, information people can go to? Where can they find your work at?
Appreciate that. Yeah, you can go to my website, 21mcommunications.com, or you can find me on X, Cold Hard Sats. That's like cold hard cash, but cold hard sats. I guess some
Nice.
spicy tweets there. So
Yeah,
yeah,
we love it.
but
Nice. Okay, and I'll also throw all the links in the show notes for the listeners at home. And yeah, thanks again, Phil. Appreciate you.
Car, thanks so much for having me, man. This was a blast. Appreciate everything that you do, and thanks for having me on.